Welcome back. I'm going to be shampooing these absolutely unbelievably beautiful 1973 George Cleverley new book. They're just totally gorgeous, totally original. Actually, they've had a new heel, which I'm not entirely satisfied with. That was been on the previous videos. But the other thing is they're very, very slightly tight on me. They're wearable, but they're just a little tight. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to take this opportunity of wetting the skins whilst they're getting shampooed. And I'm going to just create some tension, just to try and stretch a couple of millimeters here and there. And it's possible, you know, it's, yeah. But I'm actually just using, it's just literally just an aerosol, a high street, you know, there's nothing particularly special about it. They're all much of a muchness. So basically, I'm just going to do the insides just very, not so much that the insides are dirty, but let's just feel, is that leather inside or canvas? Is leather. So I'm just going to spray a little bit of this inside, not so much to shampoo the insides because they're not dirty, but I just want to soften the skins with the cleaner and give it a chance to stretch very slightly. So I'm just going to shake it up. I'm just going to, it's like foam. It goes on quite weird and wet, but just spray that in. I'm going to push my hand inside just to stir it about, make sure that the inside of the skin's all wet, and it doesn't do it any harm. It looks a bit weird, but it does soften the skins very slightly, just enough to give it just a slight, I just want it to just give very slightly. I don't want to distort them, but I could do with a couple of 3 millimeters here and there, or maybe even 5 millimeters, but 5 millimeters spread over the whole length of the shoe, you won't see that. You try and do 5 millimeters in one location, you'll burst it. But 5 millimeters over at least 300 millimeters in length, you can easily lose that. So let's just pop the tree in, and I'll do a bit more, just a bit more. And what I'm going to do, it's just a strip of leather. And it's about 12 inches long. I've got another one over here, just to give you an idea of how long it is. And I've just literally just rolled it up and just make a little pack. And I'm going to cram it. I want the tree to be forced into the toe. I'm just going to stick that in the heel area, and then put it under quite some tension. I'm just going to force. There we go. Hear it creak, and I'm going to push that right the way down. I didn't want to. Let me just refold that. Actually, there's no reason why I can't hold the top of this. It's folded over enough. It's about 5-6 millimeters thickness of leather. So let's just shove that down here, down the back, and then I'll fold the tree and I'll hold the leather so I can't lose it. It's creaking a bit. Right, that's one, and then that's really tight now. So I'm just going to spray this quite heavily, and I'll leave it for about a minute, and then I'll agitate it with a brush. It looks a bit weird. There's absolutely nothing to worry about. Okay, let's just pop that one out of the way, and I'm going to give the other one the same treatment. Spray a bit inside and force the leather. As I say, I'm just using that as a softener really. I don't really need to be washing the insides. I always wipe them over with alcohol on, you know, any old shoes, just to make sure. But this does soften the skin, so here we go. It will just give a couple of millimeters, 3 or 4 millimeters if I'm really lucky. Right, let's just fold this leather up as well. And I'm going to do exactly the same. Push this into the heel, try and drag myself an extra few millimeters. There we go. I should put the tree in first, that'll help. There we go. Let's just try and get this in here. Come on. There we go. That's it. Then I'm going to force this down. It'll creak and bark. Actually, that's too much. I thought these were the same length, but never mind. Let me just try and refold this again. Just that was overdoing it somewhat. Now then, there's definitely a piece of dyed leather there. I want to keep that out of harm's way. I don't want that to any risk of that dyed bit touching these pale buckskins. There's, who knows what the solvent that I'm spraying on there, it might cause it to transfer. Now that would be a nightmare. Anyway, just that's better. Okay, it's in. They're under huge tension. Right. Spray on the cleaner. Bit inside. Put it out of harm's way. Let that one's actually the toe's not done. Yeah, let's have some of this. There we go. Okay. Let's fetch the other one for its second dose. Okay, now I've got a clean brush. I've just washed this. It's just a shoe brush. It's a cheap shoe brush, and I've washed it with shampoo to make sure it's absolutely clean. And you just agitate the skins very slightly. You don't have to go mad. Perhaps about as hard as you would when you're brushing your teeth. You know, it's you don't go mad, even though you put reasonably firm pressure on. Okay, that's one coat. I do this 2 or 3 times. Let's come back and just rub this into. It goes on, and it goes on. Appears to be very wet, but it hasn't actually wet that skin very much. You can see it's a bit patchy. So I'm going to put it on much heavier, second coat. There we go. And it does take a while to dry. Maybe, you know, perhaps overnight, and the nap on the buckskin will be a bit flat and a little bit crushed. And I generally use, when it's dry, just to dress up the nap. You can use a soft brush, but I generally use one of those, a nylon, one of those green pan scrubbers, you know, the nylon pan scourer. It's about the right sort of texture. Wire brushes are a problem. They're a bit scratchy, and they tend to sort of stretch the fibre, so you get like tendrils, and you have to singe that off with a match or a candle. The other thing with a brass brush, brass oxidizes, and it gets like it reacts with the oxygen in the atmosphere, and it gets like a black surface. And on a light skin like these, when you scrub that with a brass suede brush, you get like black patches all over the dark suede or buckskin, which is a nightmare. So you have to go through this whole process again of. So yeah, try to avoid using a brass suede brush. It only really works on dark colours, but they're a bit on the sharp side. I find them too sharp. They just stretch and elongate the fibres. The shoe looks a bit hairy, almost like feathers, and it can be singed off with a candle or a match, but it's a bit frightening to see it if you've never seen it done before. So I'm doing this one for the 3rd time. You see how wet they're getting, and you know, if they're going to stretch, it will. In fact, what I'm going to do before I let these dry, I'm going to tighten up that bit of leather in the back heel there, and just put an extra fold in it. Now the skin's wet. I'll stand just that little bit of chance of just getting a little bit of extra length. I don't really, yeah. The other pair, the tan pair, fit rather better on myself, but they've stretched slightly with the gentleman that owned them prior to me, wore them for longer, and they just sort of stretched very slightly over the years, and they fit better. This pair are the size and shape George Cleverley made in 1973, and a fraction, probably just half a size too small for me. There we go. But it'll be easy to, very easy to stretch it when the skin's wet as this. These are a vintage Bespoke shoe, and it seems weird to be treating such a precious sort of antique item in this way, but this is how you get them clean. It's terrifying if you've never done it before. And there's no half measures. You don't just you don't say, oh, well, I'm a bit frightened, let's use less product. You use less product and I'm going overkill here, you know, you don't have to use this much product, but I generally do. I really like to get them clean in one application. If you're a bit sort of timid with the product, when you rub it, it comes out a bit patchy. You'll get certain areas that are completely clean, certain areas that are slightly clean, and certain areas that are not clean at all. And it will look very patchy. It will look far worse than it did. Whoops, and I've dropped the brush. Where's that gone? Crawling about. There we go. As I say to you, you know, just say if you're going to do it, make sure that you get it nice and even. And don't be timid. You know, this is a product that's designed to be sprayed on shoes. It doesn't tell you on the can to apply it quite as heavily as I'm doing here, but for me, I always think it works just to get the job done the first time. I'm sure, you know, getting them wet isn't good for them really, but neither is it doing them any real harm. But if I don't get this done in one go, I've then got to come back and do it again. So then you get them wet twice. So what's better, you know, to get them wet, mildly wet twice, or get them very wet once? My argument is just to do the job in one hit, get it done. And that, my hands are a bit slippy now. So, and that will be it. I won't touch those until they're dry, and I'll do a separate video and showing you what they'll look like. They'll look very flat, very dark, and a little bit hard to touch, and they'll be disappointing looking. You need to dress up the nap, and I'll do that in a separate video, and it'll be at least 24 hours before I come back to them. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to wash my hands, because I've got dirt all over my hands. So I'm going to pull the trees out, roll the leather up a little bit tighter, and force it back in again, just a little bit tighter, just to try and get that bit of extra stretch whilst they're wet. But I'm not going to do it with dirty hands. I think that I've been gripping the shoe, and that must have come off the sole edging or whatever. So I do not want to be risking getting in that dirt. So I'll wash my hands, and I'll do that bit off camera.